Aaron Levy with CIVL Radio 101.7 FM, and we're here outside the library at UFV in G Building in Abbotsford. Celeste Dick walking by, point guard for the University of the Fraser Valley Cascades women's basketball team, bronze medal winner in national competition last year, and Celeste is going to fill out the Abbots Forward survey to tell us what she thinks about the city of Abbotsford. She'll be entered into a contest to win one free iPad, and she'll also contribute to the future of Abbotsford and the official community plan put together by the Citizens Advisory Commission and this Abbots Forward initiative. So Joe Johnson, president of the Canadian University Press, business manager at the Cascade Student Journalism Society, and board member on the University of the Fraser Valley's Campus Community Radio Society, you've just completed the Abbots Forward survey. What do you have to say?
I think it's a really good process to get feedback from the students here at UFV.
And what feedback in particular did you provide for this survey?
I think the biggest thing is that I think the city should build up the U district around the university, build some nightlife, possibly remove some cars and just have a place where students can walk around, get a drink in the middle of the day. And there are places now that you can do that, but it's just not a fully encompassed community around UFV yet.
Do you think you're going to win the iPad?
I think there's a decent chance.
Joe Johnson, president of the Canadian University Press, board member at the University of the Fraser Valley's Campus Community Radio Society, and business manager for the Cascade Journalism Society here at UFV in Abbotsford. I'm Aaron Levy, signing off.
How many people here have done video editing before? Have you used Premiere?
Yeah.
iMovie? It's dramatically different than iMovie.
Windows Movie Maker counts.
And when I first applied for this job, I had to use Premiere Elements and Windows Movie Maker, and they needed a demo, but it was geared towards teaching students, so I gave a demo on Windows Movie Maker, and well, that helped me get hired. Like that, or else no one even close to qualified applied for the job. So you can do a lot of things in those simpler programs. I would peel my skin off trying to do things now because I'm just so used to having a much broader palette. But it's the difference between the Windows Paint versus Photoshop or Illustrator. You can do some amazing things in Windows Paint. I've seen some great art. It's like the 8-bit art and stuff, but it's a lot more difficult and challenging to do so. So Premiere Pro gives you a lot more control over things, but requisitely there's a much larger curve. So originally I was wondering if this was going to be a workshop where you guys try and do something at the same time, but it's not likely to be that, both because you said that everyone would be ready and just spacing. Obviously we don't have enough space, enough computers. So it's mostly going to be me telling you how to do things with examples, and when you have questions, feel free to interrupt me. If there's two people who have questions at the same time, you can solve it over there, or just create a little pit and you can fight over it, and whoever loses gets to ask a question first. But I want questions because I might miss a few details, and things that are clear to me might not be clear to you because I've been doing it for 7 years. So let's get started. I'll get started. It doesn't matter if you're running Windows or Mac. Premiere runs almost exactly the same. So on the Mac, of course, I can start it from either. I just prefer using this guy here. I always prefer the spotlight on my Mac. So I'm going to open up Mac, and let me ask you guys a couple of questions here. When you've got the video off the cameras, sort of like the camera that he's using, actually, the same model as the ones we have you tried to view any of that video? Some of you guys don't know who borrowed those cameras. No one's looked at it? Okay. Some computers, especially if you have an older OS, it might not be able to play it back directly. Once you get the editing software, it will, but it is important to keep in mind that some computers will not be able to play that without pro editing software on them. Yes?
Our computer won't open it.
Premiere?
Yeah.
You've got into Spotlight?
Yep.
You just typed in Premiere? Could always restart.
I'll do that.
Because it's fine if you follow along, you might lose a few things, but you might be able to see what I'm talking about. So, fine. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm willing to wait a couple of minutes to see how people are doing when you're trying to copy me. Older versions of Premiere, such as CS4, which is what I've got in the student lab, in ETS is almost the same, but it does look a lot different in certain parts. CS6 is pretty good. If you download the trial version, the current ones are Adobe Premiere Pro Creative Cloud, CC, and that has a huge different look. It's blue instead of yellow and stuff, so it's dramatically different. Actually, it feels different too. The Creative Cloud is a subscription model base where you download everything, pay students $29 a month to get everything, almost everything put out by Adobe. I paid for it. I'm not necessarily saying everyone here has to pay for it. No comment on pirating, but people who do that often end up paying for it if they stay in the field. So that's what they're hoping. But yeah, it's $29 a month, and you get always, every time there's an upgrade, you get the upgrades you really need. Like suddenly I wake up and download like new upgrades. You think it's a bug patch, and it's like new features. It's pretty neat. So it is worth keeping that in mind. All right, so that's an introduction to Premiere Pro, which was created by the same people who originally created Final Cut back in 1992 or something. So when you first started up, that one's not working, but I'm going to move along. Are you guys trying to open it, or you don't have to? You can totally just watch me here if you want to stare at the screen. So when you're first starting a Premiere Pro project, you'd want to click on New Project, but you need footage. And you never want to just copy your footage right from a memory card right into Premiere. So before I get to this part, I usually take my memory cards, or in this case I'm using a module from my big camera, and I want to copy the content over to the computer and have a duplicate. I don't even erase it until it's on there. And then for a course, well, in general, make a backup somewhere else. So use like the onboard computer's hard drive to copy all the content over the card, and then have another hard drive or somewhere else, put it in two places. Then you can clear the card. I have seen more than once where people had been working on the memory cards directly with Premiere, because you can, and the programs crawl, it crashes, it's not worth it. Render times would be, what would be 10 minutes, might be 10 hours. So copy it onto the computer's hard drive. Not even talking about a flash drive. That's a good thing for backup, is a flash drive for a backup, but for your actual working files should be on the computer. And I'm actually going to bring this point up in more detail as we go on, because it's the #1 issue when I see people crying and stuff, and I do, and it makes me sad. But it's happened to me. I'll admit I probably broke into tears or punched a hole in the wall or something the first time that happened to me after working on a project for 2 months, or at least 40 hours, and then there's nothing there. All right, so you've copied your full project over, and that's standard drag and drop. Does anyone need any help with that? It sounds funny, but I have faculty who don't know how to turn computer monitors on too. So, and I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of that, because I don't know how. This is the whole computer. If I didn't know this was the computer, like, how do you turn it off? So I'm going to click New Project, and you get this sort of menu that starts up here. Most of this you can ignore until you're more advanced, and even then I ignore it always until I get to Location. So Location is the folder, of course, where you're going to save your project. In this case, I'm just going to use Documents, and let's just create a new one. I mean, I might not have the right mouse button on this. I usually like to name everything with dates and details. The more detail you have in the name, it's more annoying to type, but the easier it is to find if it goes missing, and it still can go missing. So often I'd say Premiere Workshop, and then I'll have the date after that. Even though you can search by date normally, it's just easier to track things down sometimes. Create. There. And then the name. Here's a good example, Premiere Workshop. Is this Journalism 300 or 301?
301.
301. What's today's date? 24th. 2015. That's how much detail I'll often go into file names and stuff, because I have so many I want to see it at a glance. So. But I can ignore all the rest of the stuff. This default, same as project, is great. if you're working on the hard drive. Okay. Another thing, wow, see the screen here, it's too, the resolution. Most people get a little confused by this, and this is why I'm going to ignore this for now, if I can try to get around to get, I'm going to close it. That's it. What about, I'm just going to see if I can adjust the resolution settings on here. I'm used to working with 2 minimum monitors, sometimes 3. But I can't get once I get to the stage. Close command, right? What was the way of shrinking this thing again?
Usually go from the bottom right side and just like peel towards the of the window itself, bottom right, and then just like click it and then hold it in. It's on my Mac.
Well, I've got a Mac laptop, like a MacBook Air, so it's, I can usually use a finger slide or something to adjust the resolution. Give me a second here. I might have not actually set that up right. Let's go to 12 by 720. No, it's not actually affecting everything else, just affecting that. So I'm going to have to try something different. See, most windows have evil. Changing resolution is not really new. I'm gonna just restart Premiere.
Just like zoom in maybe?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Zoom, you can move it around.
Well, this I should have zoomed the screen. I'm trying to remember how to zoom the screen. Let's see.
Maybe.
So I'm just gonna restart Premiere. This is like after real way. That's always fun. Okay, so let's see. Too bad there's no trackpad. I don't know if that made a difference, but let's try it again. Use Chrome. Does it have Chrome on it? Oh, there it is. Right. back, but it bypassed that. That's what I was hoping. Okay. It'll probably pop up anyway. This, I want to close that other window because the only way you can close it is by clicking cancel at the bottom. And usually you have a full display, but when we're running projectors that aren't HD, it creates a problem with resolution. Never had that before though. So this is the main Premiere CS6 desktop sort of thing. It's made up of a series of panels. Another question, who is familiar with Photoshop? Same number of people, roughly, slightly less actually, okay. Photoshop probably useful for this. So if you're not familiar with those programs, then maybe this is going to be completely new for most of you. I'm looking for connections on that, but so it's made up of a series of panels, which are sort of like sub-windows or tabs in a browser. And in Premiere, I have the source panel, the Premiere, I've got my project panel, my timeline panel. There's effect controls, an audio mixer. There's actually a lot more in there that are all under the window. We're not going to get to use most of them tonight because it's just too much to learn. So let's just get a Finder window up here. And while I'm demonstrating that, I'm just going to copy this stuff over. Copying over, I'll start explaining all this. So the main panel that you use in Premiere is your timeline panel right here. Notice there's a yellow outline. If you get the newest version, it's got a blue outline. But this outline tells you which one's active. And our project panel down here on the bottom is where all your files will be, all your video stuff. This over here, your source panel will show you your unedited files. If you got a video down here, you double-click it, it shows up here. And you can do some interesting stuff in there. Trimming is very important. Timeline panel is where you do most of your work. That's sort of cutting and pasting work. And then the program shows you your edited footage. Effect controls shows you things to do with keyframes and effects. Audio mixer is more advanced than we'll deal with today. So we've got a million little controls. We've got our menu at the top here. On a Windows computer, they don't have the Premiere Pro one. It's just going to file, and most of the stuff is combined there. Save as, etc. Edit, project settings. I will be working a lot from here, but there's a lot of shortcuts. But from now, I'm going to be introducing features from the menu at the top. So let's see how long. I have a feeling it's still not quite copied over, but I'm going to go to File, Import. So if you want to bring stuff into your program, File, Import, and still loading. Oh, it's almost done now. Any confusion or questions about the layout? Might be dramatically different than anything you've seen before. This is exciting, isn't it? What's exciting about it and frustrating at the same time is when you go to edit something you really love, and you're not doing it for marks. When you're not doing it for marks, you're doing something that you want to do, then it's for yourself, and that becomes a lot more fun. And you're willing to experiment a lot more, I think, in those cases. When it's for marks, you got to be a little more cautious. And there we go. So here we go. So I'm going to bring this all in. I'm just going to bring everything in there. Import. Oh, except for that. Can't recursively bring this up. Oh yes, when you go between using a PC all day and then you switch back to a Mac, it's a little thing I do it at home all the time, but I guess because it's the MacBook, I'm usually lying on the couch or something like that. Okay, so I'm importing the file. So to reiterate what I just did, I went to File and Import. there's a whole bunch of ways to do that. I'm showing you guys one way to do everything today. Yeah, that's fine. Because otherwise it would be way too confusing, right? Also notice, just for your edification here, you move the mouse pointer in between panels, you get this little arrow that moves up and down. You can click and drag and adjust the size. I don't tend to do that as much here normally, but I do here. Normally I have 2 monitors. So here I've got all the files I brought in. Let's take a look at some of these. If I double click on a file, it shows up in the source menu, the original version. Okay, I have what's called a lower third there. I just made a bunch of this stuff up today. Right? I've got a little video I ripped off of Vimeo. I'm using it for educational purposes. So did anyone see this little display outside of the library today? They had Abbotsford is looking for students' input in how the future of the city will be. And so they have a questionnaire, and that's what this little news piece I've recorded is going to be. How for sound? Do we have sound? Really bad sound. I was looking for something free because the program I usually use isn't there. Let's see what I made this up just a little while ago here. Okay, I didn't make up most of it. I made up the word CIBL on location, but I didn't make the rest. All right. So, and then what else do I have? What's this one? Oh, that's the original one. I don't need that. So you can actually select and click and delete and do all those things. You can create folders, file, new, bins. Bins in video are folders and everything else. So if you need to create a new folder for all, if you get so many little assets, they're called assets. If you got 20,000 different video clips and 20 sound clips, you want to create bins to organize them. So you can access all that from File, New, Bin. I've already done that. I actually imported a bin just called Footage. And let's see what we got for some footage. Okay.
Hi, I'm Aaron Levy with CIBL Radio 101.7 FM, and we're here outside the library at UFE in G building in Abbotsford. Select walking by.
All right, so a couple of things. You can click. Okay, so let's go into some fun here. See this yellow thing here? That's called the current time indicator. I think of it as a thermometer because it's looking like a thermometer over there. You can click on that and now drag it around. It's fine. Actually, this is really good here.
Celeste did walking by. Point guard for the University of the Fraser Valley Cascade.
Women's basketball team, bronze medal winner in national competition
last year. Because tell us every town, she's not shine and they what?
That seems like a waste of time, but that'll prevent you from getting your homework done in time if you're anything like me. I've had an hour of just like red-faced laughter, couldn't breathe kind of thing from just doing that back and forth. But yeah, this is really important for trying to find the start and end of your clips. So let's do an example. How do I mark the footage, the original footage, to have a start and end for it? So I'm going to just play along here.
I'm Aaron Levy with CIBL Radio 101.7.
I'm not going to show you keyboard shortcuts today, so I'm just going to click on this. When you get familiar with the software, you do everything with your fingers and the mouse. Like lots of keyboard shortcuts, but it makes more sense to get familiar with the program first, I think.
With CIBL.
So I just want to start right before that. So right there's good. I want to have a little bit extra, just to make sure that you can fade in. Now you can't see all the options here, so make that big. All right, so I got all these little controls at the bottom here. So I need to do what's called trimming. So I've got stuff at the beginning of the clip and at the end of the clip I don't want. I want to just trim them off. So I'm going to click these buttons here, mark in and mark out. And if you are curious about keyboard shortcuts to speed up your work, those are what are in brackets. So I'm going to click the mark in for the start here. Go right towards the end.
Initiative. Let's watch.
Oh wait, it went right to the end. So this one, I think I cut it off like right about where it should end. But I'm gonna mark out, and you see the blue or greenish teal coloring there. That is everything that's part of the clip. So everything outside of that is part of the original footage, but it won't be part of the clip, and you'll understand that in a minute. I'm gonna do a couple more of these. So again, I just go down to the folder here, or the project window, double click on it.
Got the red result. You ready? All right, Joe. You can come say hi. So Joe.
So right before Joe shows up,
So,
I hear him say it, you can come say hi.
so Joe John. You can come say hi.
Okay. So, you know, I am going to use the keyboard shortcuts. The problem with the small screen is it's cutting away a lot of the stuff here. So,
Kansas Community Radio Society and business manager for the Cascade Journalism Society here at UFB in Abbotsford. I'm Aaron Levy, signing off.
this was all impromptu. I was like, I want to get some videos for you guys so I can do a demonstration. I always shoot something new each time, and this display was out there. I'm like, what a perfect sort of journalism opportunity. And with Aaron there as one of them, he was actually working for them today. I figured here's my microphone, do something for me. So we've got that. Let's get a couple more clips here so I can learn about putting them together. I have got those two as my main interview clips, but I also have B-roll and experimental shots. So have you guys talked about B-roll before in class?
They have an idea, secondary role that you...
I never shoot enough with it. It gives
main footage.
perspective for what you're shooting. So I might have Aaron talking about it. I might have too much shaky camera or something happens, or I just want to display stuff at the same time that's of what's going on here. So I want to show what's happening without having to cut to it with silence. So I can use B-roll for that. So just a map. Let's go down here. This isn't B-roll. This is and class. So this is just, this would be decent in terms of people just talking. So show you what's going on. That's how you can like magically edit things to make it look different. I can shoot something outside or something completely unrelated and include it and make it look like it's related because people associate things together which are necessary. Now that's not something you necessarily want in journalism, but it's useful for telling a story for film that's done. I already took a shot on that. I usually use a tripod. This was just all handheld. Until you get the really big, heavy shoulder-mounted cameras, it's always a little bit shaky. I don't think I had anti-shake on either, so. The smaller cameras that you guys are going to be using are even more prone to shaking, so tripods are a really good idea. There. Oh wait, there was something cooler happening. Just talking. So if I choose a new in and out point in the footage, it will cancel the previous in and out. So I had some in and out footage. Like you guys can see me doing that. I selected some end footage here and there and decided, no, I don't like that. So I started a new one over here, and it canceled the previous one. There is a way to have multiple ones, something called subclips, but I'm not going to get into that today. But it is possible. Anything's possible. Well, this can't exceed the speed of light, but. I think we're on. I just want one outdoor shot. I actually have a better one, but I'll just use this. All right, so I'm going to go back into here, and guess what? The original clip we used, if I click on that one, I made a selection for it. That selection stays. So any of those selections with the trimming, it will remember it. Though it's a good idea to save. In fact, I'm just going to tell you something now. Saving. Programs crash. Doesn't matter what the platform is. It'll crash. It's Murphy's Law. The moment you're almost finished and you got really into video editing because you're just in the zone, and then it's when it crashes. But you were so in the zone you forgot to save for the last hour or even 10 minutes sometimes. That's when the tears come rolling. So you can actually go into Preferences and go down to Autosave. I recommend this every time. If you've got it on your own computer, it'll remember autosave settings. But in our lab and maybe here, you have to change the autosave every time you log in. So one of the first things that's worth taking a note for is to go into autosave. Autosave every 20 minutes? Not for me. Nope. I'm too paranoid. I want at least every 10 minutes, 10 copies. And it'll save in a folder called autosave. I'll show you that in a second here. So it should be, it probably hasn't autosaved yet, but it'll create a folder in here about what the autosaves. So when something goes wrong, then you can at least not lose everything. You've got some backup. So very, very important. So we've selected some clips here, and we want to now start putting them together. So this is going to be kind of hard here to fit everything in here. All right, so we need to create a timeline. So there's a few different ways I can create a timeline. So let's just go to File, New, Sequence. I'm just going to show you this. I don't even do it this way, but I want to show you guys the standard way. So File, New, Sequence. I click there, and this is where the program's going to suck, because that thing's going to pop up that we had a problem with before. See? Please. Yeah. But I'm hoping I can double click on something and it'll work. All right. I'm going to choose 1080i in this case. You don't have to know what this is. This is the thing. There's so many settings in here. This is the first point of serious confusion for some people. Which one do you choose? You have to know the type of footage you've shot with, but you're probably going to be working with footage from different sources. So that's pretty common, so they might have different resolution. So keep that in mind, and we'll scale them later. But on our cameras, most cameras these days, the AVC HD 1080i are the options you want to use. So it says 1080i 30, 1080, that is your number of pixels or your resolution from top to bottom. That's how many dots there are. 30 is approximately the number of frames per second, 29.97. Anamorphic, which you can't quite see, but it's in there, that means the pixels aren't square. Actually, this one is square pixels. Yes, and I double clicked on it, it worked. So you know, generally, you can tell what you need by actually clicking on the file and holding the mouse over it. See how right here it says movie 1920 by 1080i, or just 1080, and that's your frame rate. Oh, I didn't create the right frame rate. I'm just going to change that to a new one. File, New, Sequence. I actually want 1080p then. So now I've got the right frame rate. Okay, so let's try. So the first thing I want to throw in there, usually I don't put titles on first. Usually I actually edit all the video together, but I'm going to put the title on first anyway. I literally drag and drop. Let's do that again. So I click on the title here, or the clip, and just drag it right over to my sequence window. And notice now, now that I've got a sequence, I've got all this stuff that wasn't there before. I've got video 1, video 2, video 3, audio 1, audio 2, etc. So those who are, a couple of you guys who said you're familiar with Photoshop, It's like Photoshop layers, the different tracks of video and audio. For those who aren't used to Photoshop, videos are like onions. Onions have layers. It's not Shrek, but it's like that. It's like a transparent piece of plastic, and things can show through. So in this case, we have video 1. In this case, I'm going to keep the title there, but often I'll put the titles on a different layer. It depends. If you were working in an environment like this, different organizations will have different conventions as well. They'll have their own different policies that say, no, you always do it this way, and this way, especially if you have to trade off with someone. I have the freedom of being able to figure out my own methods, which probably means I'm completely different than anyone in former, like working at the CBC or anything like that. They would probably have systems that make more sense, which for me, I'm like, well, I can do it however I want. So keep that in mind. So I've got titles here. I want that terrible news theme in there, so I'm going to click and drag the music in here as well. And watch what happens now. This is not my hand moving really fast. I'm clicking and dragging it around. A little line lines it up with the end of the previous one. You can see on the end of the previous line it sort of will pop. And as I drag to the left, it'll snap. And so they can snap into place as well. It's a really useful feature, this little horseshoe, I guess it's a magnet, snaps things into place. And now let's get that first clip. Here. I'm going to bring this over here as well. Uh-oh, I have a problem. I knew this problem. I have my audio overlapping. Well, first of all, I want to reduce the audio. So that's that intro music. It's too long. So normally I will go through it and see where I want to cut it. I don't just want to do what I just did. I actually want to find good points so it works well. In this case, I'm just going to trim it to the left. And I'm going to bring this over here and button them up against each other. They snap. You can also, if there's a space between clips, you can right-click, whatever that is on a Mac. Yes, Control. I can right-click or Control-click or two-finger click if you got a touchpad, and choose Ripple Delete, and that'll bring them together. I do that all the time. All right, let's play that. What do we got? That's editing. We've just edited two clips together. So let's get this big first. Notice it's really choppy. It's not rendered.
The library, a UFE and G building in Abbotsford.
Perfect.
Celeste Dick walking by, point guard for the University of the Fraser Valley Cascades, women's basketball.
So what? Let's go into a couple of details here.
The library.
So that starts too late, so I have to adjust that. So there's a few ways to do that. For the purpose of this lesson, I'm just going to bring this a little earlier here. I can actually hold the mouse over that starting bracket, and when you get this red bracket right here, I can click that and drag and drop. So let's look for right about here. I want some extra space in front, right. Just going to delete that and bring it back down.
Hi.
Good enough. All right, and the reason this one was playing so slowly is because it's a huge video file. I just rendered this out in After Effects. I grabbed a template video off online, but I created this graphic here, and then I had to have a computer render it, and it's 2 gigabytes for a 10-second clip, or I guess the whole thing is 50 seconds. No, wait. Oh no, that's the whole. Anyway, it's not very long. So 2 gigabytes, that's really overkill in this case. So I have to, the computer is choking on it, so that's why it plays back very slowly. Now it's managed to buffer it in memory, so it started off a little nicer, now it's getting sluggish. So there's something I can do about it. It's never really required, but if I press enter, will that help? So sometimes when you have things like that choking on a video clip because you've got effects in there, you can press Enter on the keyboard and it'll render, but you don't have to. On older systems, you had to do this just to be able to view them, but you don't have to anymore. I think the only reason that's choking in this case is because it's a 2 GB file and these are old computers. So when you actually export the video at the end, that will be an issue. So we're going to cancel that. So you see this yellow line and this red line. That's specifically what I'm referring to. Yellow means it's not rendered, but it may or may not have to be. It's not entirely sure. On the newer systems, if you've got a high-end computer system, it usually means that's okay. Green definitely means it can play back smoothly. Red means it probably can't play back smoothly completely. So, especially if you put effects on it like color correction, it'll be an issue. So we've got these clips. Let's add the one with Joe there. And again, I can just literally click and drag. Now, notice it's getting outside of the screen. It's getting too big. You're going to do a lot of zooming on these things. Now, most of the people, when I see them first playing with Premiere, they want to go with the magnifying glass tool and then zoom to zoom in, or alt zoom to zoom out. All you have to do, actually, here's the keyboard shortcut that I really have to tell you. There's a couple of them. It's the plus or minus keys on your keyboard. You use that a lot. And the space bar for playback too. That allows you to zoom in and out to get more space on your screen because you're often having to resize it like crazy. Also, the backslash allows you to zoom everything in that sequence window to fit into one window. So it's too big right now. If I press the backslash button under the delete key, everything fits in. So that's a good way to sort of consolidate it all together. It's not, of course, doing anything. It's just a zoom system. So let's take a look at adding some tracks on top. Let's go with that lower third. Remember that thing that had its name on it? Where'd it go? This one right here. So it's animated a little logo. So let's bring that in. I'm going to introduce you to something I never talk about in these workshops, something called alpha channels. To show you what I mean.
Did Grid Valley's cancel? Back to Hi.
So that is an alpha channel. Notice how it's transparent.
Outside the library, a UFE in G building in Abbotsford.
That's called the lower third. I have to reposition it, and I'll do that in a little bit. But you saw how it. Let's go back to. So yes, I know I'm kind of over there. When you look at it here, it's black. It's a black background, but over there it's transparent. So the black actually is just transparent, but it's called an alpha channel. So if you're reading stuff, you'll see that reference. You don't have to know anything about it right now, really, other than it means, is there transparency in the image? And that's something you'll need for green screen if you're doing, you've got the weather stuff. You've got a green screen for the weather map, and that's using an alpha channel as well. So it's a very common thing in the broadcast industry, but also the special effects industry, which is the stuff I like. So we'll reposition that in a little while. I want to get a couple more clips here. And at this point, I'm now not going to worry about where they go. We're just going to, let's get a couple of cutaways from here and just put them in there. Notice how, yeah, I should explain this. This is kind of, all right, so zoom in on that and bring this down. So when I've been talking about clicking and dragging the videos or the sound from here over to here and just bring them afterwards, or I can do it from the source menu. I can click and drag down here as well. But when I click and drag them, I'm including any picture and sound that are part of those. So what if I only want what if I just want the picture or just the sound? For instance, I don't want the sound on this clip, I just want the image. So I've got a couple of icons that allow me to do that. These ones right here. This is a sound wave pattern right here, and this is an image sort of film. So if I click those and drag, I'll only bring that part of the video in. So I will get, in this case, I just want the video images of that, and notice it's not bringing anything with it. So let's repeat that. I'll bring both of them down. It automatically brings the audio as well as the video, and by clicking that, just the video. And because you don't really need the sound of general background noise all the time too. So that's one lower third, second lower. Not lower third, so B-roll. Alright, so I've got a few. So those ones don't have audio channels. So, oops. So whereas this had an alpha channel here, this is the title with his name. These ones here are stacked on top. They're not going to do that. I'll just demonstrate it. Try and demonstrate it. I want more space on my screen. Screen real estate that I'm doing these things.
Win one free iPad, and she'll also contribute to the future of Abbotsford and the official community plan put together by the Citizens Advisory Commission and this Abbots Forward initiative.
So I would rearrange those. That's not a good order for those clips, but it's something. So you can see that the layer on top just completely cut away the original video, but the audio stayed the same, and that's often what you'll want to be able to do. So layering those things is important. Let's take a look at transitions now. If I can get to those. All right, you've seen fades. Fade in, fade out, dips to black, that's what they're called. You know, those are transitions where you've got one clip, changes to another clip. Let's show you that. So if this is hard. Okay, so there's, see this little scroll bar here? I have to click and drag that to go down to effects. And there's all these effects in here. We're not going through effects, we're just going to go to transitions for now. Click the little thing. If you watch tutorials online, and that's where you're going to learn it. You're going to learn this stuff by doing it, and in your own free time watching tutorials. That's just the nature of it. And they're more up to date and they're more thorough because they're more focused, but you'll hear them say things like, just twirl down the video transition. So like that, that's what twirling down is. It doesn't do any twirling. It should spin around. But that's half the tutorials use the word twirling down. So I'm going to click video transitions, dissolve, and cross dissolve. So I want to do a cross dissolve on here. And I'm actually going to do that right at the title. I want the cross dissolve to show up there. And let's see what that does to the video. So it does a fade. Instead of just an abrupt sudden jump like this, we've got our fade. And you literally just drag it in between the clips, and it'll go in either on one side or sometimes in the middle, and that really seems completely unpredictable. I know why it is now. That's why you actually want to have what they call handles on either side too. You want a little bit of extra space. Now it should actually go right in between, yeah. So the clips don't end where they join. There's actually more stuff on either side of them, and so that gives you room for this fade to happen, and also to make some adjustments.
Hi, I'm Aaron Levy.
Still the music sucks, but let's add an audio transition as well now. Audio transitions. There's 3 of them only. And I'm just going to use X console power for now. Again, I can just drag it right over the audio clip. And it creates a much smoother change in the audio. By the way, audio is, you can usually see the audio. You scroll down these little buttons here. You can change the size of these things. You can also adjust them with that. Remember that the symbol I mentioned here? When it was this way, this allows you to click and drag things. So now I can make the space bigger. This view is actually really useful. This is your audio sound waves for the clip. Really useful because it often allows you to see where you might need to do some cutting, because sometimes the cutting is done on the sound, not the video. For instance, I don't have it here, but if I had 2 clips, 2 video clips, and they have their own audio, I don't often want to just cut them together. Often I will cut them in a way that allows them to be slightly offset. And I don't need to show you that right now, but see how one is just a little, they're no longer perfectly set together. That's called a J-cut in this case, if the reverse is an L-cut. You can do that a lot to smooth out the sound and visuals when 2 clips join together. I don't think it's necessary here, but I definitely do it for dramatic stuff.
Hi, I'm Aaron Levy.
It still works, yeah, those are 2 of them. And it can be varying lengths. L-cuts and J-cuts, so if you do any other film courses, and it's probably useful for everything anyway. But how do you do that, since it's slightly beyond the basics? Well, let's see. There's a set of tools here that we can't go into most of them, but you certainly can use this rolling edit tool and the Alt key on your keyboard. So let's do a demonstration here. All right. So I want to just click the audio. You know how we selected only the video or only the audio up in the other section over here? Well, I want to do that down here too. How do I do that? I might just want to move the audio over or the video over, or move them out of sync. So if I'm here, see what happens. Oops. Oh, that's weird. So now they're all out of sync. So
Joe Johnson, president of the Canadian University Press.
So I just moved everything out of sync on
the
purpose.
Cascade Student Journalism Society.
So yeah, it's actually doing something different on this computer than I'm used to. I usually have to press the Alt key to move them separately. But for some reason, there must be a setting I can actually move the video clip independently of the sound clip. Oh, not anymore. Okay. Maybe I actually had. Okay, I'd probably done that. So you press the Alt key and then click on it, and then you can. I just didn't realize I had done that. So press the Alt key and then you only select one part or the other, and then that rolling edit tool allows you to make slight adjustments to things like that. So I just can offset where it starts. Did you do that again? Yeah, it's kind of it's called a J cut or an L cut. And I'm going to go back. So first of all, for that you have to select only part of the clip, just the audio or just the video. So you want to press the Alt key on your keyboard and then click the clip. Whether I'll do the audio this time. Should make sure nothing's selected. So just click on the dark gray first, then click the audio in this case. Then I'm going to choose this rolling edit tool right here. I've been using this program for 2 years before I ever got to this. But it's really useful. So rolling edit is like the 2 arrows. Then I'm going to go back to here. And then I can now, with that clip still selected, now I can click the space between them and then drag back and forth up to the length that's available. So I can't go past that because that other clip stops. But I can go back this way a certain distance as well. So it just gives me that little bit of leeway for things. And between that and the transitions that we put in there already, it can create for smoother edits. I still want to make this is so tiny. Shrink it down. Okay.
Let's watch. So Joe Johnson.
That's nice and smooth. We had a fade in, fade out on this thing. J. Jonah Jameson actually. He runs the Daily Bugle. Holy crap. Joe Johnson, J. Jonah. Runs the newspaper. Okay. So we've got those clips there. Let's review where we're at here. We created this sequence from File, New Sequence. We had that annoying pop-up that asked how you want to include it, and I said, look at your video settings. So usually, let's go back into the project menu. I want to do a bit of review. I hold my mouse button over the video clip for a second. It'll tell me the settings. So if you know your camera's settings, you just know what your resolution is. But if I had grabbed something off of an old archival video or a screen capture, it'll be different resolutions. So it's important to pick the one that's going to be predominant for the most part. So in this case, I chose the standard high definition size, and I made that my size for the timeline. Anything smaller or bigger than that will have to be scaled. So we'll cover that later. So yeah, found out what size the resolution was going to be, and then I did the File, New Sequence, and chose that one from the ABC HD menu. The problem is there's so many of them. Most of the time, just choose ABC HD. If you're running from an old tape, you can choose DV as well. But another way to find the size of your file is to go into the folder that it's saved on and right-click it and go to Properties, and you can usually find what size that is. Or I'm just going to sneak out of here for a minute. I'll do that right here on a Mac. How many people are using Mac for this stuff? Like, you guys will be in here, but you can use PCs?
We've been here.
Okay. So let's do this as well for the Mac to find out the file size. Okay, so Control-click, and let's go to Get Info. That's what it is. Okay. Tell me though, that's what I'm not sure about. I'm not sure it gives me enough information on the Get Info option. Windows does. No, so you might actually have to import it into Premiere before you can tell. If you're using our student cameras here, 1080i is what their resolution is, but the anamorphic type, so keep that in mind if you're not taking notes, that sometimes you get stretched images if you use the wrong settings. Or what I commonly, and you've definitely seen this on YouTube, is people have got, the videos have black bars all the way around them. So the video is much smaller than the frame size. And when you save it that way, it's permanently stuck, so everything gets small. Or the standard filming from your phone, this direction, and then YouTube has huge black bars on the side. So knowing those settings is important. Actually, Facebook's interesting. They've adapted to that. I used to really complain about people holding their phones and videotaping incorrectly, but it's actually pretty good for someone standing up. Just our TVs would have to be turned sideways to take advantage of that. iPads not so much. It works for some stuff. So, so Windows, you can right-click, choose Property, and go to Details. On here, there's probably another way. I'm just not seeing it. But Get Info doesn't seem to have enough information. So let's go. Remove program. All right, who's lost? Well, it must be a little bit. I'm trying not to change directions too much. But I am repeating myself a few times deliberately to try and incorporate some stuff that I've said before, because there's so many little processes in here. It's easy to forget a lot of the detail. But once you've seen it, and you're like, I think I remember him doing that. You might forget how to do it, but then you will more than likely remember that you've seen it done, so you know it can be done. You might not even know what it's called, but you know to ask someone about it or Google it. You're like, yes.
And we'll have this one online too for Black.
Yeah, that's a good idea for review. So ultimately, then you're one step further than you were before, and it's not a linear learning process. It's not like watch the video and then you know what you're doing. It's a skill. It's a trade, really. It's a very hands-on trade, and also a lot of thinking, a lot of creative work as well. So what do I want to do next? We've done the basics of lining up the clips, and what time is it?
6:35 or so.
I've got lots of stuff. Right. So we've lined up the clips here, and we're just going to go with those for the moment. We don't need a ton more editing here. So yeah, we created the sequence, we dragged the clips onto the sequence. You don't have to put them on video one, but I usually do that as the default. You can create multiple sequences in Premiere, so you could have, say you've got a little segment you want to include with several clips. You could create that as one sequence, and then you've got a main segment, with say a reporter talking about something. You can actually put one sequence inside of another. So I could have another sequence here and drag it in as if it's a clip. So you can do all kinds of really cool combining sequences together. You can add still images as well. And I didn't grab any of those. I had some video, but it didn't open up. Oops, cancel. Try it again, but I don't think it'll work. Oh wait, there was something that wasn't what I wanted. Well, I'll just grab this clip of the civil symbol. I actually had a little video of a screen capture I was going to use to say, here's how you can fill out this survey. You know, I was actually trying to make it a little news report with this thing. I actually edited this already on my office computer. But so you can bring in an image, so you've got a freeze frame of someone, you can put it in there. I'm going to put it right up here. It has nothing to do with that. Right there. So both of the guys are with Civil and the Cascade. It's a conspiracy. And I hear they're friends with people in the student union as well, and employees here. But it's all an inside job, I suppose. So that's pretty bad positioning. And I've mentioned scaling and moving things around a couple of times, so now let's go into that. So I don't want that there. That's a bad spot. Frankly, if it were a regular picture, I either wanted to fill the whole screen or have it in a sort of picture-in-picture corner thing. You know, a picture of the guy who's got the mugshot, you know, in the corner there or whatever. So how do I move them around? Well, I make sure I select the clip from the sequence, not from the project panel. So once it's in here, you can do audio selection in here. And now I have to go to a new window. I mentioned before, effect controls. So this is selected. And go to effect controls, and I've got these built-in effects: motion, opacity, and timer mapping. Timer mapping is fun. You can make the computer do that. You can see like falling, and you can control the speed. It's kind of hard to use. Great for sports commercials. Motion and opacity. Opacity is pretty self-explanatory. Motion is what you'll be using 90% of the time. There's hundreds of other effects in the program. Color correction, probably the most common stuff I use after motion. But in this case, I can do a couple things. I can click the word motion, and now over here you can see these little boxes around this box around that. And now I can click and drag that around. Pretend that's a lower third there or whatever. I can also click on any number that's yellow. I can just click on it and type another number in. Or if it's yellow, and you can see this little, see that little symbol there? It's got like the hand with the two arrows there. When I have that, and I hover over the yellow button, if I click and hold the mouse button and then drag, it'll adjust those parameters. So it's really good for fine-tuning that. So I can use that to adjust. Scale, it's the same thing. I can make it big. Too big. Not so big. If I want to stretch it in one direction but not the other, I can uncheck that uniform scale button, and now I can just scale the width. Be careful when you're doing that, because not only is it going to distort it, but if you're working with someone's branding, they might not be very happy that you've stretched their image. University gets a little picky with things like that. They don't like me using certain colors. Alright, so I'll just leave that there. Wouldn't it be more aesthetically pleasing if I went right down to the bottom though? I'm leaving a gap there. I'm leaving a gap for a reason. Let's go back to the other one at the beginning. I had the lower third. Oh, actually, there's something I should mention. We're in the source window, and I had this thing. I mentioned this thing, guys, the current time indicator, that yellow bulb, and I can click and drag that around. It's the same thing here. I'm going to see this one and this one are tied together, so whatever I do to this one happens to this one as well. And that red line indicates exactly what you see up there. That's actually very important. I should have mentioned that earlier, but now I have. Don't forget that, because I mean it's pretty logical. This line is that moment in time, and you can adjust it from either. Playback buttons are pretty straightforward. Also, these step forward and step right buttons are one frame at a time, and also the left and right arrow keys do the same thing. Free iPad? No. It's a free iPad. That's Aaron practicing his goat imitation. Okay. You might pop by to see this. Okay, no, we're gonna scale the lower third. So I bring the current time indicator to the position that I want to edit on. Even though I'm not really changing, I'm just gonna scale something. I want to see it. So I bring that over to the spot, click on the thing we're going to clip, edit, go back to Effect Controls, Motion, and I'm going to scale that up, that lower third. Maybe bring it down a bit, but not too much. See how that looks now.
VL Radio 101.7 FM, and we're here outside the library at UFV in G building in Abbotsford. Celeste did.
But now it no longer just appears in the middle of the screen. Now it's right to the edge. So I think that's a little nicer. Just a tiny lower. So scaling is something I've been doing a lot of. There's actually ways to control these things in time called keyframing. I don't think we have time for that, but we do have. Because I want to talk about audio. Audio is important here. Oops, leave it up to that. I did not mean to do that. Alright, so we got a title. Okay, yeah. Notice there's two lines of audio right here. There's a top and a bottom. Most cameras have a built-in microphone, and it's a stereo microphone these days. And they'll have the exact, almost the exact same thing with the top and bottom. It might be slightly different, but in this case, it should be a little less the same than that. Yes, here's a good example. You can see it's more different right now. The reason is, I had two different microphones. Hey, I said you were going to pop by. We're just making fun of you making a goat noise.
I just texted him. That's why he said.
Why did I make a goat noise?
Because I played your voice backwards in slow motion. That's why. You sounded like this. Free iPad. In reverse. So.
So do I want to watch this? Or?
Yeah, it was actually really funny. I'll show you.
Okay.
I was going to just rent.
Not like I have work to do or anything. So.
But I was just telling these guys that there's two different audio clips here in one, and that's because I was using two microphones, the one he was carrying, and also the built-in one on the camera. So if you're using our equipment and you have the boom mic or the one on top of the camera, it's just going to record a single signal and it'll duplicate it across both channels. If you have that box, and you've shown them that little box with the two things, you can run two microphones on, you would get something like this. So you'd have one channel with one signal and one with another. And that's really useful. Now let's just listen to this.
So Joe Johnson, president of the Canadian University Press, business manager at the Cascade Student Journalism Society,
all on the
board member on the University of the Fraser Valley's Campus Community Radio Society. You've just completed the Abbotsforward survey. What do you have to say?
I hear a lot of the echo from there. It's actually not too bad, but we need to get rid of that extra sound. In some cases, it's really bad. I'll have that's a very echoey place, so I was actually surprised it worked that well, but it was a pretty decent microphone and close to your mouth. But the one on the bottom track here is really noisy. So I'm going to do something. I'm going to go to a new effect. There's called Fill. Actually, when you go to this effects panel right here, you can actually just type in the effects. So at first you won't know what they're called, but once you do, it's pretty quick. So effects. If I didn't know what it was called, I'd just go to audio effects and start searching. Where do I find it here? Fill left and fill right. There we go. I want to try fill right first.
This is to fill out the echo sound?
No, I'm actually doing it backwards this time first. Well, I'm gonna get rid of, I want to get rid of the main sound.
0.7 FM?
Nope, I didn't reverse. I want the other way. Actually, I can just do this.
And we're here outside the library at
That's pretty good. That's the camera mic. That's not the one you're
Celeste
carrying.
did walking by, point guard for the University of the Fraser Valley Cascades women's basketball team.
And I would tolerate that because he was only this far from the camera and the microphone on the camera. But in some cases, that's not going to be the option, and it's just going to be all you're going to hear is the echo or the noise of everyone talking around. In fact, the reason I knew he was out there was because that area is so loud we couldn't hear anything. I couldn't concentrate on the editing in my department, and it wasn't your voice. I didn't even know you were there. But it's just so much echo, and it's very, very loud area. So in this case, it's not so bad, but some cases it's critical. You've got to get rid of that extra sound. That's where the handheld microphone works. So let's go to that.
Hi, I'm Aaron Levy with CIVL Radio 101.7 FM, and we're here outside the library at UFV in G Building in Abbotsford. Celeste did walking by, point guard for the University of the Fraser Valley Cascades women's basketball team. Bronze medal winner in national competition last year, and Celeste is going to fill out an Abbotsforward survey to tell us what she thinks about the city of Abbotsford. She'll be entered into...
So switching between those, you can definitely hear a difference. It's a much cleaner sound to just have that close-up mic. And that fill left and fill right command work. There's ways to set it up to split the tracks, but I'm just showing you fill left and fill right. So figure out if you want to get rid of the one part or another using that. So
I look terrible in a t-shirt.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, John.
So that's a pretty important effect I find. I used to use a lot, and you guys can use it until you're a little more advanced for now.
Last year, and Celeste is going to fill out the Abbotsforward survey to tell us what she thinks about the city of Abbotsford. She'll be entered into a contest to win.
Still, sometimes I want to hear a bit of the other sound. So I can sometimes separate them, but I'm not really going to get one a little quieter than the other. But I'm not going to do that today. We're just going to deal with the one sound on that clip.
One.
And I'm also going to do that on the other one.
Abbotsforward survey.
Did I reverse those?
Survey. What do you have to say?
I think it's a really good process to get feedback from the students here at UFV.
And what?
Okay. So that's how you can kind of adjust those sounds a little bit. There's related to that. See this yellow line here? that allows you to adjust the sounds a little bit too. So if everything's just a little too quiet or too loud, these sounds are actually a little bit too loud. I was in a rush, I didn't bother setting sounds. So you can click this thin yellow line and drag and drop that up and down if you want, per clip. If you are a musician or anyone who's worked with audio stuff, one thing you could also do is the same sort of thing with this, the master clip or whatever. Do that. This is another tool I don't really want to get into right now. It's really useful, especially if you got lots of stuff. But this will adjust everything on the audio track. But if you're trying to work track by track, just that yellow line is really useful. And it tells you, that little number there tells you how much you're bringing down or up. What you don't want is your audio to be doing this.
President of the Canadian University Press,
red lines,
business manager of the Cascade Student Journalism Society.
So it's actually too loud. So you're getting it. It may have been recorded that way. Actually, part of this was.
Survey. What do you have to say?
Or it might just be that you've raised the volume too much. If you get those red marks there, it means at some point it's peaked, it's gotten distortion, and the sound quality is reduced. A little bit here and there is not a big deal, but if it's constantly in there, it can sound really bad. And not like the pleasant distortion you get from heavy metal or good guitar, tube amp. I'm trying too far. I just got a tube amp. I don't have that. I need more pedals. So we want to keep it out of there. So you usually want to keep it down to -12 for dialogue. Where's the numbers on here? There should be numbers. Yes. So to be honest, if you can get your dialogue to hover around -12, that's really what you want. So you might have to make some adjustments.
National competition last year, and Celeste is going to fill out.
Some places I heard like -20, but it doesn't have to stay there. It has to average. So it's still a little loud.
She'll be entered into a contest to win one free iPad, and she'll also contribute to the future of Abbotsford. Plan put together by the Citizens Advisory Commission
And this Abbotsford
Because you've all listened to
initiative.
YouTube and had one video
Let's watch.
really, really quiet. You had to crank the volume.
Joy
And the
Johnson,
next one you watch,
President of the Canadian University
full of
Press,
speakers.
business
So it's nice
manager
to try and get
of the
everything on the
Student
level.
Journalism
So
Society, and board member
I try to
of the
avoid
University
anything at
of
zero.
Campus Community Radio
and I
Society.
try to
You
have
just
my dialogue at
completed the
-12
Abbotsford survey.
and
What do you have to say?
give it a bit of room to go up to -6 if someone yells or something.
And what feedback?
So that's a little bit of a primer on the audio levels. It's a constant struggle to find the space on this monitor. It's because of the limits of that projector. Alright, so I wanted to show you guys another thing here. Find it. Yeah, I'll skip that. Save margins. Okay. You guys talked about save margins at all? Yeah, it's important. It's not letting me do it. Oh, I have to drag it. Haha. Forgot about that. Save margins are these, you'll see these things a lot on broadcasts and film and everything because you don't know where the edge of the screen is going to be perceived on some playback. Now on computers it's pretty safe. Everything I see here usually shows up in the end. But especially on the older types of TVs, there's still plenty of those around. But even at the arena here, I had to use these things. What it does is say, if you have, these margins are warnings saying, if you have anything happening outside of them, it might not show up in the final product. So you really want to try and keep most of your stuff inside of those. So the main part is the action. So the outer margin here is your action safe margin. You don't want any important things happening outside here. The inner one is your text safe margin. You want to try and keep all your text, unless you know it's only going to be viewed on the internet probably, but if it could be used for something else, it's a good idea to keep all your text inside of this barrier. So I'm constantly scaling things so that they'll do that. And I believe I even, I left that one thing with that, where did it go? The civil symbol here. Right there. Okay, so I have room to go down. I was pretending that was text. And I wanted to actually keep that above the line. So it is actually, it kind of cuts off there. If I didn't like that it was visible underneath, I could put something else like white underneath it. But in this case, I raised it to this height because I wanted to make sure it was within the safe margins. And at the arena here where we have our convocation, I did some slideshows, and I thought, oh, safe margins aren't going to be an issue for that, so I'll have text go right out to here. It was cut off on some of the slides because the projection, or in this case LCD, I think, wasn't centered evenly, so you still lose things. So those safe margins are a really good idea to use for a good guideline. And on CS6, I had to add it as a button with this plus button and just look for it, but on CS4, it's there automatically. So how do I do text? Well, let's create some text, and then we'll do the export. All right, so you're going to need to make titles. I just copied them from After Effects, but if I need to make a title, I'm going to go File, New Title, and there's also a title menu, New Title. Let's just look at default still, or just the basic one. When I create a title, it opens up this dialog, which says what size do you want it to be. It's usually the same size as the sequence you were last in. So it's always a good idea to give it a name. If there's only going to be one title, maybe two, you can ignore that, but they seem to multiply pretty quick, so I'm going to give this Joe Johnson. I didn't create one for him. I'm going to create a title for him, click OK. And this window pops up. Hey, come back. And this sort of graphic-y thing with lots of options that was confusing. A lot of nice little pretext setup shows up. I want to create a title, so mostly I would just click on the text button, drag that in there, and start typing. Type Joe Johnson in there. It's actually usually how I start. I'm like, oh gosh, that's impossible to read, so I'm going to change the color to black by selecting it the same way you would in a spread in Microsoft Word. Go to color. Let's try a different color. Yay, that's more visible. Now I can click this arrow key up here, select the text, and move it around. Oh, well. It's great over white, but over the black parts, I can barely see it. And maybe it's a little small, so I can actually adjust the size with, remember the yellow text, if I hold the mouse over it, I can click and drag to make it bigger. Still, that's not the most visible, is it? Then normally I'd have it here, not on top of other text. In fact, let's do that. Get rid of that text. Because in fact, what this image has, that it's on top of, has nothing to do with the title. That's an example. So right here, you see this little eyeball right there at the top. That's just saying, oh, here's what this text you just wrote will look over this image. But if you want to try a different frame, you can drag and drop or type numbers in. And that'll show it. But really, this is your title. Transparent. That's the transparency grid. So it's actually just transparent like that initial title thing I brought in. So you can often work a little easier this way. But clicking this eyeball is a great way to see how it'll look. Because there's something called motion, text over motion. That's very important to consider whenever you've got text on video, is contrasting colors. So you can see where when I had white text, you couldn't read it because it was over a light colored background. But then when I switched to black text, there was parts you also couldn't read because there was a black background as well. So usually you need to do something about that. So first of all, if you've used a word processor, most of this stuff is familiar. All the font size, kerning and leading, letting you can learn. It's not important at the moment. I'm going to select that and try and drag this over here. But I've got a lot more options than we can cover, but one that I want to cover is either stroke or shadow. So where was stroke? Let's go to stroke first. I'm going to add an outer stroke, And that will just create a little background around the image. It was black, so let's change that to white. I just click here. Just remember, my text is selected already, so I have to make sure that's the case. There we go. So now I've got a white background. I'm going to add that shadow as well. It makes it pop a little bit. Drop shadows are going to stop. So we've got a flat design, but actually it's useful here. So now let's put this eyeball back on and change the frame and get that civil logo again. Okay. So now, even over the black, I can still see that J. Let's change this actually to white because I had more options for contrast there. Change the stroke to black. There we go. So now I can still read it wherever it's going to be. Having that black outline and that little drop shadow separated from the background. So that's always something important when you're doing text. You'll use it almost any time there's any video behind that. I mean, if it were an animation where you had a solid color, it might be less critical. But in this case, different shades are all over the place. So, Joe Johnson, civil. Let's do that. So the titles are really, really useful for that sort of thing. There's a million other options in titles. I can draw shapes and stuff. I can draw pictures as well. Yep.
Could you just show them? So when you go back to, like, when you lose the title, and do you do a fade to black, or how do you go back to being opaque? So you can just see the shot and not the name?
Oh, yeah. So the title with black background sort of thing? And
no, the title, like, it'll show for 10 seconds, right?
Oh,
and
just
then
fade the
fades
title
out, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely show
Okay.
that. In fact, so once you've created this title, I can click the X on that and close it. You don't have to save the title. It seems like it's another file, but it's not. So that title, just reset. Oh, by the way, if you ever delete something in here, you go to Window, Workspace, and sorry, Window, Workspace, Reset Current Workspace. I get that question actually a lot, where'd my source menu go? I can't find it, so you can reset the workspace. Window, Workspace, Reset Workspace brings everything back. So the title that I created will show up as a file by the name I gave it in the project manager. So in this case, Joe Johnson. So now I'm going to actually drag it. I'm going to get rid of the civil one. I'm going to put the Joe Johnson one there. And we want it to fade in. There's no audio affiliated with the titles though, so they're just graphics. So you don't have to select audio or try not to select the audio. So we've got Joe Johnson. And I can still position it, even though I can position it in the other thing. I can select it, if it lets me. Yeah, by the way, if you have a hard time selecting, plus or minus keys, remember to zoom back in. I'm going to click motion, and now again I can move that whole thing around. So right now, his name will show up abruptly.
The Abbots Forward survey, what do you have to say?
I think it's a really good process to get feedback from the students here at UFV.
So I want that to fade in, so I'm going to go back to that effects panel here. Remember, I click and drag that thing, and go down to video transitions, dissolve, and the default one I use the most is called cross dissolve. And I can bring that to the start and end. Now if you get 20 titles or subtitles, that's really annoying. So you can shortcut that with Control D as well. If you put your mouse, put that current grid line right over that. And then press Control D. It's not going to work this time. Command D on a Mac. Sorry. It's Command. Every time I say Control, I mean Command if I'm talking about the Mac. It doesn't work here because I have to turn this gray. There. I didn't want to get into that. There's just so much information. I know that if I give you too much information, it just causes more confusion. But, so that's why right now, at first I just recommend clicking and dragging them on top. So let's try that again. So yeah, you just literally drag the transition. So the transition, though, conceptually is designed to go between clips. It also works on the start and end of clips as well. So let's see that one now that I've got fade.
Forward survey. What do you have to say?
Fades in.
I think it's a really good process to get feedback from the students here.
What if I want to make that fade in and out a little shorter? I can select the clip again and bring the mouse button, just make it bigger, right over to the edge of that transition, because it's showing these crosses off, and you get this little funny icon with a box and a line through it and the red bracket. And when I click there, now I can adjust the length of the duration by dragging and dropping. So let's see how short it is now. Make that a little shorter. So much quicker. So you can adjust that too. You can also click on it, and you see over here under the effects controls, the controls for that show up as well. So I can click and drag those numbers. So a lot of redundancy, and I actually think I'm going into too much of it right now, and I'm avoiding a lot. So, by the way, those are frames. That's 10 frames long. So these numbers, this series of numbers you see all over the place, are from right to left frames, seconds, minutes, hours. And I can just type in, I want that to be 15 frames long. I'll just click on it and type 15, enter, and it's 15 frames.
Feedback from the...
Yep.
And slow-mo, just how to do a slow-mo.
Oh, you need to do a slow-mo? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little different. I'll show you the simplest way here. But it's got the least control. So let's just do a different clip altogether here. Actually, let's do one of those main clips, but a different segment of it. And I'll just add it to that. Oh yeah. Yes, this one. Oh wow, time to clean my lens. Thankfully, there's a lens filter on it, which if it's scratched, I'm just going to spend $60. Not that that's cheap to replace it. Was there movement in that one? I need one with someone walking. Yes, okay, this will work. I'm just going to add that to the end of that other sequence, audio and video. All right, so let's get some space in here. All right, so I want to slow that down. There's the basic way to do that is if I right-click on the clip that's in the timeline. Sorry, Control click. Or there we go. If I Control click on a Mac or on a PC, I right-click. All these options come down here. And I want to choose speed or duration. And now I can adjust the speed or the duration. So I can double the length of it, which is 55. Sorry, which will be 22 seconds. It'll be speed is 50%. So I can choose one or the other to adjust it. So let's make the speed 50% here. If you do too much, it gets really broken. It's just a little funny. So let's play that clip. Now let's do that with a more fun clip, because fun is, it's got to be some level of fun. Speed duration.
And the official community plan put together.
right there. I know it seems juvenile. We're all adults and can't help laughing. And you can do the same thing with the sound screen. Actually, there's all kinds of weird stuff I've had with that, but usually I'm guessing you don't do the sound for that. You try to sort of slow motion of something, or it's either a replay or an effect you're going for just to emphasize something. There's a lot of different reasons. It's not usually going to be that, but all right, let's switch back. 4 posterity. Yeah, because we don't have enough time in the world to speed things. I should do editing like this. I do a lot of my editing at slightly higher speed. If I not double speed, it's a little hard to understand, though I can. But if I do about 75% of the speed, I can usually watch the entire thing I'm looking for audio blips where there's distortion or sneezes and stuff. So it speeds up some time. So yeah, that's the one way I recommend at least to start with, and then you can cut the way you want to. So what I didn't talk about is cutting in here, and I actually really should. I can literally, just when I go back to the original tool, that if you've done these rolling edits with that symbol right there, you always have to go back here when you've done that. So if I click on that clip I want to edit, I can still sort of get that mouse here, I can get that pointer here, bracket with an arrow, and click and drag, and that'll adjust the start and end points. So that's kind of something I should have said a little bit earlier, but hey, there's a million little things. So now that's sort of a way of trimming inside there too. So if you have to trim further from your original source, you can still do that here. You can click and drag it back and forth, delete it. And there's one other thing I want to cover before we go to exporting, is just back to the sound, is adjusting the sound levels. So supposing the sounds aren't too loud, or are too loud, or they're too quiet, and I need to adjust that. What I usually do is I will do the same thing. I'll right-click on the clip, or control-click, I guess, and choose the audio gain. So it's near that speed duration for adjusting the Mickey Mouse to. Who's got a really low voice? Speaks slow. Well, Giant versus Mickey Mouse, anyway. Audio gain allows me to adjust the volume levels. So I've got all these options here. You can pay attention to the top two for now. If it's too loud all the time, you're going to want to make a negative number on this one. And I do it in increments of 3 for some reason, because that's a doubling of power and things. So I'll say it was too loud, I want to bring the whole thing, everything on that clip down by 3. Nope, that wasn't enough, I can go back and do it by 6, etc. Or if it's too quiet, so the microphone is too far away or the person had a quiet voice, I want to bring that number up, and I'll do that in 3, 6, 9. Over time, you look at it like, it looks like it's about 9 decibels too low, I put it in, and it's pretty close. But increments of 3 decibels, because that's about the smallest amount that you can hear clearly. And sometimes you need to only adjust it a little tiny bit, so 3 to 6. I would actually bring this one down a little bit, to be honest. And you can see let's do it again here, so you can see what happens. I'm going to make it bigger this time. Audio gain, we're going to make it 6 up this time. Now look at those wave patterns. Now they got bigger. And notice now they've gone beyond the bottom here. They're distorting, so that's not a good idea to go that much. They're still doing it in a couple spots there. So that's something you might want to consider when you're bringing your clip right off the bat, is to try and get all the audio levels lined up to roughly the same. Because one clip will be really loud, one clip will be really quiet. Dragging that yellow line up and down isn't going to work for some of them because it might be too much of a change. So that audio gain option is something you got to play around with. All right, so I've mostly covered a million little things. Some very well structured, some scattered, because there's a lot of things you got to see in here. But one thing that I have to cover is what you do when you're done. You've got to export your file. You got to make sure it plays back, because Premiere isn't click to save the file and then take the Premiere thing and give it to your instructor and say, here's my video. That's a file full of text and binary data that has nothing to do with the videos. It just tells you where the video is. So you have to export it into a proper video file. So that's what we're going to do. And one thing I said I was going to bring up later, and now is the time to bring it up, is once you've copied all your video footage onto the computer and you're doing your editing, if you then move it to another computer, guess what? You have to move the video with that as well, and preferably in the same folder as it was. So I had everything copied into one folder, and I didn't change the organization of that folder. If they break, so your video moves to a new folder, or you just grab the project file, and leave the video on your hard drive at home. It's like, I've copied the project file, I've got my video here, because I've got the Premiere project here. Bring it to school, it won't find any footage, because the footage is at home. So the Premiere project file, it links to your video and it links to your audio. The titles are included, but it just links to those. It doesn't include those, so they have to come with it wherever you work. So that's where a portable USB, the portable hard drive is actually pretty good for that kind of thing. So if you're working in here, I don't know how big your student folders are on your own accounts anymore. They often are not big enough for a full video, and they're slow. So it's a good idea to actually have that backup and backup every day, and then copy stuff onto the hard drive. But remember, maybe other students can access them. Because even if you're only going to use this computer here, someone else, it might only be on that computer, it might not be networked. I know that's in our other lab, the D204. It's going to be only on that one computer. Same with our lab as well. So that's where having your own device, a portable hard drive, one of those $80 1 terabyte hard drives or something, is a good idea. Or a couple of flash drives, but then it'll be a little longer to swap information on those. But that's something that's very good. Just keep that backup I mentioned at the beginning. Your save files, reset that save file thing through the preferences to more frequent, and cycle your video so you've got the backup. Okay, so keeping that stuff together, now we want to export so that it's all together permanently. When I'm done my video editing, or when I'm just ready to review it, because you're never finished until you have to hand it in. You can keep on working on it until you're just either completely bored of it, or it's due time. It's due, because there's always tweaks you can make. So to export it, I'm going to either select the sequence, either in the project panel here. Sequence is this little icon right here. It looks like different tracks with that current time indicator. Or I can choose the sequence window. It's got the yellow border around it. Then I'm going to go to File and Export Media. And a new window should pop up. Once again, it's too darn large. And a billion more settings. First of all, I want to make sure that this goes to output. It looks like it does that on the newer versions, but on older ones it didn't. So make sure that's set to output at the top, the scale of fit, and let's see if I can just reduce the size of this somehow. Oh, I can't really, it seems to be kind of stuck. I've got these formats here. So the video would play back here, but see, I can't even get it into that spot, but I can really do this. So the video will display here. And this is where you'd want to check to see if it's got black borders around the edges and stuff. Again, sometimes you can't help it if you've got multiple sources in your video, but your main stuff should fit the framing you've chosen if you've chosen correctly. And you don't want it to be distorted or stretched as well. So in this case, yep, I'm happy with that. On the right side are all these millions of settings. Do you have any preferences for how you want them to export it? What kind of?
Not yet, but the most effective format, and also the smallest size probably, because I don't think they can afford all these big hard drives.
No, but at least the flash drives are getting really cheap. These days, H.264 is the de facto standard.
And also we're going to upload it finally to eventually to YouTube.
Okay, well H.264 is really good for that.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of what they run on. They don't do Flash necessarily anymore. Or at least, so this format here has got QuickTime. QuickTime is great, huge files though. So H.264 is what I'm going to use. I would spend another 6 hours telling you what these all are. This is way too many, so let's choose H.264. Tick tock. It's a pinwheel of death. All right, and so that's the format. And then there's the presets. There's a lot of presets. I usually use the YouTube ones because really they're just numbers. Some of them are probably copies. There's probably a Vimeo one that's identical to a YouTube one. If you shot in true high definition, and how long are these videos supposed to be?
The mood piece is about 3 to 4 minutes, and the next one might be up to 7 minutes or so.
You can get by with the YouTube HD 1080p 2997 one. That's, but any of the YouTube HD ones are fine. I'm going to choose this one right here because I shot at 24 frames a second. So it actually is titled the name of the source, the resolution, and the frame rate. And you want to try and keep that frame rate the same. I don't really expect you guys to have all that kind of stuff memorized, though. It's not necessarily a technical course, so. But there's a lot of these presets. So output name, again, it's yellow, but I click on it and I want to save it in a certain folder. I usually create a folder called output. So in this case, I'm just going to call it habits forward. I guess. So this H.264 format will save them as MP4, which I think most of the phones these days save them as MP4 as well. MP4 is pretty common. So if you're just using a preset like that one, hey, go back to the one I had set, then you don't really have to do a lot. And it is really, to be honest, out of the realm, I think, of this workshop to go into detail of why you'd want to, about changing all the settings on this. It's just a lot of information, so I'm just going to try and get that one to stick. Make sure you save the name in the right spot. Premiere will remember the last project you worked on and where the save files for that were. So quite often I'll be like, just put in the name, click save, and then I go to find it and I don't know where it is. And I don't remember what project I worked on last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever. So I'm trying to track the thing down and I'm like, oh, there it is. I'll make a duplicate of it and I can tell. So it's a good idea to check where the output name will go to save. Otherwise it might save on some folder that's hard to find. All these presets down here we can ignore, but they do talk about audio and video. So many presets, that's great. And somewhere in here at the bottom there's an OK button. Let's see if I can just press enter. Yes. And it should open up yet another window. I hope. It might not because it might not have worked properly. Oh yeah, it is. There it is. This is not popping. Adobe Media Encoder. This is the program that's going to convert all the stuff that points from one file to the next in your titles and turns them into a proper video. So this will open up and it's just going to have a list of any files you're encoding. Old computers. Next time we'll do this in a clown outfit, maybe. Wait, I'm scared of clowns. Can't sleep, clown will eat me. Can't sleep, clown will eat me. And it should show up in here. There we go. And it tells you all your settings. And you can actually click on the yellow and change things again if you need to. And when you're ready to go, unless you're using a really fast computer, you want to click this and walk away, go do something else. Last year, our computers in our lab, a 10-minute video would take 3 hours. It's a lot faster now. These ones are pretty old. I don't know how to take. Hold on. it's still thinking, let's put it that way. Not actually going to render out the whole video, but just somewhere, because it's really just big. Oh, there we go. All right. So that's what happens, and it'll finish. When it's finished, it'll say, "Hey, thanks." I think I know that it didn't actually work because I did something silly here, and that actually leads me to one thing that's important to do. Yes, that's exactly what I did. See these orange brackets right here? I've cut my video off to nothing almost, and I've encountered this enough times with students. It's important to point that out. That was scary. That means something failed in rendering, and I know why though. These are your work area bars. So I had them in reverse. I must have bumped them, and I think I remember seeing that happen, and I thought it was a marker. These tell you what will be rendered. So if I have a ton of video out here, but I set my work area bars by clicking and dragging on them to say that much. When I export my video, it's only going to cover the stuff that's directly underneath them. And in reverse, if they stick out way past your video might be 2 minutes long. Well, why is it a 10-hour-long video? And the time is because you've got 6 or 8 hours or however long of nothing. So it's a good idea to actually check these work area bars. But it's also really useful to render out short portions of your video by adjusting them, because it'll be a lot quicker. Just going to render that then. And that's it. The render area bars are useful, but the exports were really the last thing I want to talk about. Now we'll play again. Oh, but I'm going to sheep this time, or goat. I think that's a sheep, I'm not sure. There's somewhere. Standard thing. Any questions? Usually no, because you don't realize until you're doing this that you have questions. Because it's the hands-on thing. Any ideas? Anything that you guys would like to see? I'd like to in the future. Well, let's put it this way. If anyone is stuck on something, you're welcome to come to our lab and get a little bit of help from us. I'm the main video guy there, but everybody knows Premiere now reasonably well. So we just all have different levels of solution. We are running an older version of this, but it looks almost identical. So let's just say, this is saying about 15 minutes. That timer right here goes up and down. Once that yellow bar is done, then you're good. But don't just assume that, because it's halfway here, it's half done, it might slow down or whatever. So I'm not going to render that out in full, but when it is rendered out in full, you'll be able to find it in the folder with .mp4 at the end of it. All right? Perfect. Happy end. Thank you very much, guys, for your relative patience with that. I can see some eyes rolling. It's dry. I try to throw in some odd entertainment